Good afternoon, everybody. At least for me, it's afternoon. It's Monday afternoon, and it's beautiful out, and I'm out here on the porch, sitting in the sun because it's warm and it's nice. So I thought, what the heck? I'll read out here. I'm going to do chapters 6 and 7, and you'll probably hear some random noises out here of planes or kids playing or birds or I don't know what, but it's just going to add nicely to the atmosphere. Okay, so in To Kill a Mockingbird, when last we left, Jem and Scout and Dill got in trouble because they were playing the Boo Radley's life game out on the front lawn, acting out things that they thought that had happened and how it is that they think that he was. And that was not good. But I want you to remember that it's summer and Dill is home, or I guess his summer home there, and they're playing. Scout had a very difficult time in school, her first year, lots of frustrations and having to kind of get along and how all of that goes. And across the street are the Radleys. Well, actually, they're down the street are the Radleys. And there's a lot of myth about them and Boo Radley and how he is and what his issues are, and that he eats squirrels and he's scary and he scratches on the screens in the summertime and all kinds of things you got to be worried about. But the kids on the last couple days of school found things in the knothole of the tree outside of the Radley house. The Radley house is right up against the schoolyard, and so they have to walk by it to get home, because their house is down the block and there's a big tree there and a knothole in it. And somebody had been placing things in it. I don't know if you remember, but pennies and some gum. And they figured it must belong to maybe some school kid or a town kid or, you know, someone who rides the bus, and they couldn't get to the stuff quick enough, and so they had to, so they forgot to pick it up. This is where we are at. We are starting chapter 6 on page 67. Are you ready? Yes, said our father, when Jem asked him if we could go over and sit by Miss Rachel's fish pool with Dill, as this was his last night in Macomb. Tell him so long for me, and we'll see him next summer. We leaped over the low wall that separated Miss Rachel's yard from our driveway. Jem whistled Bob White, and Dill answered in the darkness. Not a breath blowing, said Jem. Look yonder. He pointed to the east. A giant moon was rising behind Miss Maudie's pecan trees. Well, that makes it seem hotter, he said. Cross it in the night? Asked Dill, not looking up. He was constructing a cigarette from newspaper and string. No, just the lady. Don't light that thing, Dill. You'll stink up this whole end of town. There was a lady in the moon in Macomb. She sat in a dresser, combing her hair. We're going to miss your boy, I said. Reckon we better watch for Mr. Avery. Mr. Avery boarded across the street from Mrs. Henry Lafayette Du Bois's house. Besides making change and the collection plate every Sunday, Mr. Avery sat on the porch every night until 9 o'clock and sneezed. One evening, we were privileged to witness a performance by him which seemed to have been his positively last, for he never again did it again so long as we watched. Jem and I were leaving Miss Rachel's front steps one night when Dill stopped us. Golly, look yonder! He pointed across the street. At first we saw nothing but a kudzu covered from the porch. But a closer inspection revealed an arc of white descending from the leaves and splashing in the yellow circle on the street light. Now, some 10 feet from source to earth, it seemed to us. Jem said that Mr. Avery misfigured, and Dill said he must drink a gallon a day, and the ensuing contest to determine relative distance and respective prowess only made me feel left out again, as I was untalented in this area. I hope you get what he was doing. It's very wrong. Dill stretched and yawned and said together, too casually, I know what. Let's go for a walk. He sounded fishy to me. Nobody in Macomb just went for a walk. Where to, Dill? Dill jerked his head in a southern direction. Jem said, "Okay." And when I protested, he said sweetly, "Well, you don't have to come along, Angel May." "You don't have to go. Remember," and Jem was not one to dwell on past defeats. It seemed the only message he got from Atticus was insight into the art of cross-examination. "Scout, we ain't going to do anything. We're just going to go to the street light and back." We strolled silently down the sidewalk, listening to porch swings creaking with the weight of the neighborhood, listening to the soft night murmur of the grown people on the street. Occasionally we heard Mrs. Stephanie Crawford laugh. "Well," said Dill. "Okay," said Jem. Why don't you go on home, Scout?" "What are you going to do?" Dill and Jem were simply going to peep in the window with a loose shutter to see if they could get a look at Boo Radley, and if I didn't want to go with them, I could go straight home and keep my fat flopping mouth shut, and that was all. "But what in the Sam Holy Hill did you wait till tonight?" "Because nobody could see them in the night. Because Atticus would be so deep in his book he wouldn't hear the kingdom come. Because if Boo Radley killed them, they'd miss school instead of vacation. And because it was easier to see inside a dark house in the dark than in the daytime. Did I understand?" "Jem, please." "Scout, I'm telling you for the last time, you shut your trap or go home. I declare to the Lord, you're getting more like a girl every day." With that I had no option but to join them. We thought it was better to go under the high wire fence at the rear of the Radley lot. We stood less chance of being seen. The fence enclosed a large garden and a narrow wooden outhouse. Jem held up the bottom wire and motioned Dill under. I followed. I held up the wire for Jem. It was a tight squeeze for him. "Don't make a sound," he whispered. "Don't get in a row of collars, whatever you do. They'll wake the dead." With this thought in mind, I made perhaps one step a minute. I moved faster when I saw Jem far ahead beckoning in the moonlight. We came to the gate that divided the garden from the backyard. Jem touched it. The gate squeaked. "Spit on it," whispered Dill. "You've got us in a box, Jem," I muttered. "We can't get out of here so easy." "Shh! Spit on it, Scout." We spat ourselves dry. Jem opened the gate slowly, lifted it aside, and rested it on the fence. We were in the backyard. The back of the Radley house was less inviting than the front. A ramshackle porch ran along the width of the house, and there were 2 doors and 2 dark windows between the doors. Instead of a column, a rough 2x4 supported one end of the roof, and an old Franklin stove sat in a corner of the porch. Above it, a hat rack mirror caught the moon and shone eerily. "Ugh," Jem softly lifting his foot. "Smatter." "Chickens," he breathed. Then we could be obliged to dodge the unseen from all directions was confirmed when Dill ahead of us spelled G-O-D in a whisper. We crept to the side of the house, around to the window with a hanging shutter. The sill was several inches taller than Jem. "Give me a hand up," he muttered to Dill. "Wait, though." Jem grabbed his left wrist with his right wrist, and I grabbed my left wrist and Jem's right wrist, and we crouched, and Jill still sat on our saddle, and we raised him up, and he caught the windowsill. "Hurry," Jem whispered. "We can't last much longer." Dill punched his shoulder, and we lowered him to the ground. "What'd you see?" "Nothing. Curtains. There's a little tiny light way off somewhere, though." "Let's get away from here," breathed Jem. "Let's go around the back." "Shh," he warned me as I was about to protest. "Let's try the back window." "Dill, no," I said. Dill stopped, and he let Jem go ahead, and when Jem put his foot on the bottom step, the step squeaked. He stood still, and then he tried his weight by degrees, and the step was silent. Jem skipped 2 steps, put his foot on the porch, heaved himself to it, and teetered a long moment. He regained his balance and dropped to his knees. He crawled to the window, raised his head, and looked in. And then I saw a shadow. It was the shadow of a man with a hat on. At first I thought it was a tree, but there was no wind blowing, and the tree trunks never walked. The back porch, with bathed in moonlight and the shadow, crisp as the toast, moved across the porch toward Jem. Dill saw it next. He put his hands to his face, and when it crossed Jem, Jem saw it. He put his arms over his head and went rigid. The shadow stopped about a foot beyond Jem. Its arms came out from its side, dropped, and was still. And then it turned and moved back across Jem, walked along the porch and off the side of the house, remaining as it had come. Jem leaped off the porch and galloped toward us. He flung open the gate, danced Dill and me through, and shooed us between two rows of swishing collards. Halfway through the collards I tripped, and as I tripped, the roar of a shotgun shattered the neighborhood. Dill and Jem dived beside me. Jem's breath came in sobs. "Fence by the schoolyard. Hurry, Scout!" Jem held the barbed wire, and Dill and I rolled through and were halfway to the shelter of the school's solitary oak when we sensed that Jem wasn't with us. We ran back, and we found him struggling in the fence, kicking his pants off to get loose, and he ran to the oak tree in his shorts. Safely behind it, we gave to numbness, but Jem's mind was racing. "We gotta get home. They'll miss us." We ran across the schoolyard, crawled under the fence to Deer's pasture behind our house, climbed our back fence, and were at the back steps before Jem could let us rest in peace. Respiration normal, the three of us strolled as casually as we could to the front yard, and we looked down the street and saw a circle of the neighbors at the Radley front gate. "We better go down there," said Jem. "They'll think it's funny if we don't show up." Mr. Nathan Radley was standing inside his gate, a shotgun broken across his arms. Atticus was standing beside Miss Maudie and Miss Crawford, and Miss Rachel and Miss Avery were nearby. None of them saw us come up. We eased in beside Miss Maudie, who looked around. Where were you? All, didn't you hear the commotion?" "What happened?" asked Jem. "Mr. Radley shot at a Negro in his collard patch." "Oh, did he hit him?" "No," said Miss Stephanie. "Shot in the air. Scared him pale, though. Says if anybody sees a white Negro around, well, that's the one. Says he got the other barrel waiting for the next sound he hears in his patch, and next time he won't aim high, be it dog, a black, or Jem Finch." "Ma'am," Atticus spoke, "where are your pants, son?" "Pants, sir?" "Your pants." It was no use. In his shorts before God and everyone. I sighed. Mr. Finch?" In the glare of the streetlight, I could see Dill hatching one. His eyes widened, and his fat chair face grew rounder. "What is it, Dill?" asked Atticus. I won 'em from 'em," he said vaguely. "Won them? How?" Dill's hand sought the back of his head. He brought it forward and across his forehead. "We were playing strip poker up yonder by the fish pool," he said. Jem and I relaxed. The neighbors seemed satisfied. They all stiffened. But what was strip poker? We had no chance to find out. Miss Rachel went off like the town fire siren. Jesus! Dill Harris! Gambling by my fish pool? I'll strip poker you, sir." Atticus saved Dill from immediate dismemberment. "Just a minute, Miss Rachel," he said. "I've never heard of 'em doing that before. Were you all playing cards?" Jem fielded Dill's fly with his eyes closed. "No, sir, just with matches." I admired my brother. Matches were dangerous, but cards were fatal. "Jem, Scout," said Atticus, "I don't want to hear poker in any form again. You go by Dill's and get your pants, Jem. Settle it yourselves." "Don't worry, Dill," said Jem as we trotted up the sidewalk. "She ain't gonna get ya. He'll talk her out of it. That was fast thinking, son. Listen. You hear?" We stopped. We heard Atticus's voice. "Not serious. They'll go through it, Miss Rachel." Dill was comforted, but Jem and I weren't. There was the problem of Jem showing up some pants in the morning. "She give you some of mine?" said Dill. as we came to Miss Rachel's steps. Jem said he couldn't get in 'em, but thanks anyway. We said goodbye, and Dill went inside the house. He evidently remembered he was engaged to me, for he ran back and kissed me swiftly in front of Jem. "You all right here?" he bawled after us. Had Jem's pants been safely on him, we would not have slept much anyway. Every night sound I heard from my cot on the back porch was magnified threefold. Every scratch of feet on gravel was Boo Radley seeking revenge, and every passing Negro laughing in the night was Boo Radley loose and after us. Insects splashing against the screen were Boo Radley Insane's fingers picking the wire to pieces. The chinaberry trees were malignant, hovering alive. I lingered between sleep and wakefulness until I heard Jem murmur, "Sleep, little Three Eyes. Are you crazy? Shh!" Atticus's lights out. It was waning moonlight, and I saw Jem swing his feet to the floor. "I'm going after him," he said. I sat upright. "You can't. I won't let you." He was struggling in his shirt. "I got to go." "You do, and I'll wake Atticus." "You do, and I'll kill you." I pulled him down beside me on the cot. I tried to reason with him. "Mr. Nathan's gonna find him in the morning, Jem. He knows you lost him, and when he shows him to Atticus, that'll be pretty bad. That's all there is to it. Just go back to bed." "That's what I know," Jem said. "That's why I'm going after him." I began to feel sick. Going back to that place by himself? I remember Miss Stephanie. Mr. Nathan had the other barrel waiting for the next sound he heard, be it a Negro or dog. Jem knew that better than I. I was desperate. "Look, it ain't worth it, Jem. A licking hurts, but it don't last. You'll get your head shot off. Jem, please." He blew out his breath, patiently. "It's like this, Scout," he muttered. "Atticus ain't ever whipped me since I can remember, and I want to keep it that way." This was a thought. It seemed that Atticus threatened us every day. "You mean he never caught you at anything?" "Maybe so, but I just want to keep it that way, Scout. We should have done that tonight. We shouldn't have done that tonight, Scout." It was then, I suppose, that Jem and I first began to part company. Sometimes I did not understand him, but my periods of bewilderment were short-lived. This was beyond me. "Please," I pleaded, "can't you just think about it for a minute? By yourself on that place?" "Shut up! It's not like he'd ever speak to you again or something. I'm going to wake him up, Jem, I swear I am." Jem grabbed my pajama collar and wrenched it tight. "Then I'm going with you," I choked. "No, you ain't. You'll just make noise." It was no use. I unlatched the black door and I held it while he crept down the stairs. It must have been 2:00. The moon was setting and the lattice-work shadows were fading into fuzzy nothingness. Jem's white shirt-tail dipped and bobbed like a small ghost dancing away to escape the morning come. A faint breeze stirred and cooled the sweat running down my sides. He went the back way, through Deer's pasture, across the schoolyard, and around the fence. I thought, at least that's the way he was headed. It would take longer, so it was not time to worry yet. I waited until it was time to worry, and I listened for Mr. Radley's shotgun, and then I thought I heard the back fence creak. It was wishful thinking. Then I heard Atticus cough. I held my breath. Sometime when we made a midnight pilgrimage to the bathroom, we would find him reading. He said he often woke up during the night and checked on us and read himself back to sleep. I waited for his light to go on, straightened my eyes to see it flood the hall. It stayed off, and I breathed again. The night crawlers had retired, but ripe chinaberries drummed on the roof while the wind stirred, and the darkness was desolate with the barking of distant dogs. And there he was, returning to me. His white shirt bobbed over the back fence and slowly grew larger. He came up the back steps, latched the door behind him, and sat on the cot. Wordlessly, he held up his pants. He lay down, and for a while I heard his cot trembling. Soon he was still, and I didn't hear him stir again. And that is Chapter 6. I'm going to pause this and I'll restart one video for chapter 7.